I think my wife, let's call her Amy, hates me. We've been together since 2018, married since 2022. We had twins last January, and since then she has changed so much. When she and I first started going out, she was very clear that she never wanted children. She had a copper IUD in and said she intended to get her tubes removed once it expired. But the day came and she had the IUD removed, and was told that they wouldn't allow her to get her tubes tied because she was too young. She asked me to get snipped, but I didn't have medical insurance at the time, so couldn't afford to do so. A few months later she said she changed her mind and wanted to try for children, so we did. She had 2 miscarriages before she got pregnant with our identical twin boys. I was extremely happy, and despite her being sick constantly, she seemed happy too. She gave birth when she was 32 weeks and the boys spent 7 weeks in the NICU. My wife took this really hard. She constantly blamed herself because she worked up until she had to give birth, and says that had she done the bed rest like her doctor suggested, our boys would have stayed in longer. She also beat herself up a lot over not being able to breastfeed. She never established a milk supply because she was so stressed after birth and ended up with some kind of infection, and was told any milk she pumped after antibiotics would have needed to be dumped. After that point she was extremely distant from me and our kids. While I was on paternity leave, I was the main caretaker of the boys. I changed all their diapers, fed them, bathed them, everything. I took them to all their doctor's appointments by myself, and my wife just laid in bed, completely shut out. My wife was supposed to start back up work remotely, but her job decided to not allow remote work. This sent her into a spiral because they ended up terminated her posi, tie-in. Without her working we couldn't afford child care, so she just stayed home all day with the boys. She didn't cook or clean, and talked about how she hated being home all day and how she missed working. We fought constantly because I felt like it was unfair. I wanted to be home all day doing nothing. I wanted to be a stay-at-home dad, and she was taking it all for granted. Well, now the boys are a year old, and I feel like nothing has changed. She still just sits and stares blankly, barely talking to me or engaging with our boys. I constantly ask her to help around the house, or to literally anything besides sit and stare. She looks like she's lost 30 pounds since giving birth and she's so pale, but whenever I mention anything to her she just yells at me to leave her alone. Our sex life is almost non-existent, and when we are having sex she just lies there, not making any sounds or moving. I feel like she hates me and hates our kids, and the life we've built. How do I talk to her? Update 1. I worded it this way because many times, including yesterday, I have come home from work and my boys are in their cribs, wearing dirty diapers with rashes while my wife is either sleeping or completely zoned out on the rocking chair. It has felt like she has done nothing all day, but it isn't true and I know that. Are you completely unaware of postpartum depression is a question I was asked a lot. And the truth is, yes. I live in Texas where sex ed doesn't really exist. I was never taught anything about pregnancy, labor and delivery, or the 4th trimester, postpartum. Doctors never gave us information on it. It was mentioned once in the beginning of her pregnancy by a doctor in passing, but I neglected to ask for clarification or do any research on my own. I also failed my wife by not bothering to Google her symptoms, which could have easily shown me postpartum depression. How did you let this go on for a year without asking for help or advice? This is not a good excuse, but I didn't know that this was a hormonal issue at all. I genuinely believed my wife was just being neglectful and emotionally distant because she hated me and hated being a mom. I work almost daily, usually 12-hour shifts on a construction site, so coming home to a messy house, fussy babies and having to clean everything and make dinner just resulted in anger on my side, so I just let that frustration build rather than try to understand her. Do you have any friends or family who can help? Unfortunately we don't. My mom is out of the picture, and my father is dead. My wife's family was abusive to her growing up, and our friends abandoned us due to rumors my mom spread online, where she was telling everyone my wife had 2 abortions rather than 2 miscarriages. You have been having sex with her when she isn't emotionally involved? I should have added more details here, and can see why a lot of people were angry at my comment about our sex life. I honestly thought it was important to add that it has been non-existent, and when we had sex she was uninvolved. My wife after birth was the only one to initiate intimacy, and I believe now it was out of guilt. We haven't had sex in months because I don't say yes anymore and I don't ask for it. I shouldn't have said yes previously and I know it was wrong of me. Do you even love your wife? Of course I love her. I posted this out of anger and frustration, because I believed that it was she who didn't love me anymore and I thought I was the main problem. I made it all about me when it isn't me at all. It's this disgusting and awful disorder that comes after giving birth. I was just so angry because I have asked her to get help so many times and she has either yelled at me to leave her alone or she has just stayed quiet. But now I know that I need to get her help, regardless of if she wants help or not. I am getting her signed up for an intensive outpatient therapy program that is online, so she doesn't have to deal with the trauma of going back to a hospital. I am also going to be hiring cleaning help so my wife has someone home with her, and someone who is able to clean and take care of the chores while my wife is emotionally incapable. I am so sorry to all the birth givers out there who have experienced this hell my wife has been going through, and I feel for the parents who have had to watch their partners go through this. I wish I had informed myself of what was happening, and I can only try better from here on out. I haven't spoken to my wife yet about my intentions, but I plan to when I am off of work. Update 2. I spoke to my wife last night after I got off of work. I started it out by asking her if she had heard about postpartum depression, and she said she did know, that a doctor described it to her right after she gave birth. I asked her if she thought she might be experiencing it, and she said no. She didn't believe postpartum depression would last this long, and I asked her if we could look up statistics and information on it together, so we did. She was pretty quiet while we did this, but when we were done I asked her if she related to anything about it. She told me yes, everything the articles described was exactly how she has been feeling. I then asked her if we could get her signed up for online therapy, and I suggested I hire help for cleaning. She agreed to hiring help, but she is still hesitant on getting emotional support due to her birth trauma. I told her that I would be discussing with the boys' pediatrician on other options that might be helpful for my wife. I haven't brought up relocating yet. I want to give her some time to process our conversation first before adding to it. I called out of work today, and will be taking my wife out to lunch at her favorite spot in town and paying for her to get her hands and toes done. I know it won't come close to making up for my negligence for the last year, but it's a start. Update 3. My wife watches Too Hot Takes sometimes, and I usually listen with her while I do dishes or sweep/mop, and thought that maybe this subreddit would be a great go-to for advice on my marriage, because on Reddit and on YouTube comments you all are so brutally honest and to the point, and I knew I needed that to get this shit sorted. You all were so quick to point out my wife's postpartum depression, and directed me in ways that I have fallen short with my wife. Thank you everyone for the constructive criticism and the honesty. I would not have been able to get to this point of reality if I had been coddled and pampered. My wife actually laughed for the first time today when our boys started laughing at the word booty. Boys will be boys, haha. It was the most beautiful sound I have ever heard, and I haven't gotten to listen to it in so long. She seems to be in much better spirits, which I will keep an eye on, as I know sometimes that can be a red flag for suicidal ideation or intentions. My wife had been trying to be more honest with me on how she is feeling in the moment, and we have her established with group therapy starting Monday with orientation. I wish I could say thank you to everyone personally and individually for hopefully helping us save our marriage and potentially for saving my wife's life. I genuinely couldn't have done it with this subreddit. Thank you Too Hot Takes for having such a huge and wonderful platform where people can come and receive advice and honesty. It's a beautiful thing you have here. I'm going to go and start making my wife's favorite dinner and watch the Hunger Games for a movie marathon, something we haven't done in over a year. This will hopefully be my last update and last post in this subreddit if everything goes well. Thank you. End of edit. It's been a day or so since I added an update on my original post, but this update I thought needed its own post if it's allowed. I scrolled through this subreddit to see how others posted their updates and saw a few. Hopefully this is allowed. So after begging for several days, my wife finally gave in and agreed to online therapy. We picked a program we thought would benefit her best, and got it situated. She has an intake phone call tomorrow that will organize her hours, what group she is assigned to, and who her personal therapist is. It's an intensive outpatient group therapy program, goes for about 12 weeks. I have also reduced my hours at work by request, asking for 6 hours on shift during the weekdays, and I am on call during weekends for call-outs. It is temporary, until my wife is better. I have also hired cleaning services to come weekly. She is the wife of a co-worker of mine and she has 3 kids of her own. I spoke to her directly and she offered to help my wife with the boys if my wife ever asks for help, with no extra charge. My wife and I are openly discussing breaking up temporarily. During our discussion last night, my wife opened up about how she hasn't been happy, and how she has had an ongoing online affair with someone. I don't blame her for the affair. I can't imagine how alone she has felt this last year with me working constantly and always putting the boys first. She texted him in front of me saying it was over, that she wanted to prioritize our marriage and her mental health, and then blocked him on every platform she had him added onto, which gave me a lot of reassurance. My wife was the one who suggested a temporary breakup. I don't think it would be appropriate given her mental health at the moment, and asked that we just work on her getting better before discussing any marriage issues we have. She also opened up to me and let me know she has been self-harming, and showed me where. And it's awful. I had no words to say, except apologize profusely for my negligence. I didn't notice anything for months. She said she started hurting herself after we stopped being intimate. She didn't have a reason why. Once she is halfway through her outpatient T program, we decided that's when we will start marriage counseling. That way she had time to develop some healthy coping mechanisms. Because we know there is a chance that marriage counseling could bring out a lot of the worst in us as individuals, and we wanted her to be as prepared as possible while still getting individual help in her program. I will also be starting individual therapy once marriage counseling is set up, so I have a healthy outlet. Not the update I wanted to provide, but I hope that in the future I can give a better one. I'm honestly just glad my wife agreed to therapy, and is willing to work us out together. I will never be able to make up for the last 12 months I haven't been by her side, but I will try for the rest of my life with her to make amends for it. Oop, thank you so much. I honestly have no valid excuse as to why we didn't inform ourselves of what could come with postpartum. We were both so focused on the pregnancy and making sure the boys were okay, especially after losing the 2 pregnancies prior, we didn't bother researching what occurs after birth. And that was negligence on our ends. I refused to throw in a towel, especially if she is willing to work with me through our errors. I fell in love with her, and when we got married we said through sickness and health, and she is very very sick. She just needs some help right now, and needed it a long time ago, but what I didn't know then, I do know now, and I will do my best to fix what I wronged. Edit. I have posted in this subreddit twice before this in regard to my situation if anyone wants context to this. I don't honestly have energy to answer questions in my messages or in the comments. This is going to be very jumbled and might not make sense. My mind is everywhere right now. I went to work 2 days ago, only for 4 hours because I had booked a flight for my wife and our twin boys that evening to go to northern Washington state to look at houses with our realtor. I had packed Yone's suitcases the night before and I was so excited to take the trip. I took a week off of work and planned to take us up the Space Needle and explore the ocean up there, as we have never seen the ocean before. Got home from work that afternoon and my wife was gone. My coworker's wife was there by herself, crying and trying to care for my boys who were also crying. When I asked her where my wife was and if she was okay, she told me my wife left a folder in our room and that she was gone. I of course called her, but it said this number you are trying to reach is inactive or unavailable. Or some crap along those lines. The folder had divorce papers, some already signed by her. She left a note and basically explained what was happening and what she did. She left me for the man she had an affair with. I guess he was an old coworker of hers. She fell in love and didn't want me anymore. Asked for 25% custody of the kids and left her number for her lawyer. What the fuck is 25% custody? Weekends only? Every other weekend? Asked that I didn't try to call or text her, that she has a new phone number. I don't know what I did wrong anymore. We were, I thought, on the right track. We started marriage counseling. We were going on dates regularly, communicating, laughing, enjoying each other. I thought everything was starting to improve. She was smiling and laughing so much more. She seems genuinely happier. She was even playing with our boys, something she never did before. How does someone seem so much better and turn around to do this? I know I had fucked up before. I neglected her and ignored all the red flags in her mental health. I acknowledge them and take full accountability. I told her it was all my fault, and I know it is. She has every right to leave me, but why did she pretend to be happy if she wasn't? If she wanted a divorce, why didn't she ask? I told her if that is what she needed and wanted that we could, but that I thought we had something to fight for, and she agreed with me. She told me she didn't want a divorce. She said she wanted to grow old and get married. She wanted to be with me. Now she doesn't? She says she has never been happy with me, that she felt forced to have kids when she didn't want any. I never forced her. I asked one time and when she declined I kept to myself. I was okay not having kids if she didn't want to go through having them. I was never going to force her into anything. I loved and respected her wishes. And I will respect her wishes now. In her note she even asked me to Venmo her money to start her off. I sent it to her. I know she will need money for her prescriptions and for food. But I am so heartbroken and honestly pissed off. I am so mad. How does one even go about finding daycare? What do I need to research and look into? Do I need to look for any red flags in daycares? How much does daycare even cost for twins? Any advice would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Oop, she said she started talking to him either shortly before she gave birth or right after, so probably a little over a year. I honestly am not sure I can right now. I really want to. The school system by us has incredibly low ratings, and having grown up in that school system I know teachers and students don't care about education. Kids are there because they legally have to and teachers are there for paychecks. I only passed high school because I just asked my teachers for A's. But right now I don't know how I would travel across the US with twin infants by myself. I don't have anyone else, and if we do partial custody, I would need permission to move, wouldn't I? Unless that's just something that happens in movies and TV shows. I posted some months ago about my wife, Amy, and our twin sons. I was asking for advice on her behaviors, which had come out to be postpartum depression. She and I started therapy and then she told me she has been having an affair for months, and then left me for that affair partner. It's been a few months now, and just as shit started dying down my wife shows up at my fucking doorstep. This was on Monday. I legally had to give her our new address, and since we had moved from Texas to Washington, I didn't expect her to come up here. I knew she had been stalking me, not full-on creepy stalking, but she was checking out my Instagram stories on random accounts. I had her blocked. She would message me on these accounts to brag about her new life. She would talk about how good sex is with whatever STD-ridden guy she was fucking that week. She would send photos of herself in different beds, doing various inappropriate acts with different people. She would send photos of dime bags and booze bottles. Whatever she could send she did. No matter how many accounts I blocked. 2 weeks ago I just deleted my Instagram because I was fucking fed up, and I guess she took it upon herself to show up in person to harass me. I saw her first on my doorbell camera, as I was not home and my nanny was there. She looked like she was high or something, picking at her face, and she looked like a twig. She had lost so much more weight than I thought. I told my nanny to not open the door and ignore her. I had to leave work early to get home to convince her to leave. She said she was there to pick up our boys, and started accusing me of sexually abusing them or beating them, and said she had proof of whatever the fuck she was convinced I was doing. She told me she had to convince her boyfriend to drive her to Washington just to grab the kids. She didn't even have car seats in his car for them. His fucking back seats were full of bottles, cans, just garbage. I didn't even know how to react to her bullshit, so I called the cops and had her removed from the property. I just don't know what to fucking do anymore. She has nothing in Texas, so I'm sure she's going to find some fucking shelter or tent to camp out in close by so she can come harass me. I doubt I can get a restraining order, and I spent all my money buying this house. My boys don't deserve to be forced to go through this shit. They are only a year old, but fuck, I don't want this for them. I don't want her around as they grow up, don't want them to see who she had become because she has never been like this. She used to be so sweet, funny, loving. She always had a smile on her face, and yeah, she was a little crazy from her trauma, but that crazy was nothing compared to whatever she is now. The Amy I knew would never touch hard substances, she barely drank. She hated the idea of sleeping around. Now on to second story. Hired my daughter's ex-boyfriend as an intern after seeing his hard work and qualifications. Now she's furious and feels betrayed. When my daughter, 21F, was in high school, she started dating a guy, 22 male, who at first glance made me a little nervous. He had that stereotypical popular jock look, the type you might expect to be a player or not take relationships seriously. As a dad, I naturally wanted to protect my daughter, but I was completely wrong about him. Despite his outward appearance, he turned out to be a genuinely kind and respectful young man. He was polite, always using yes sir and no ma'am, and he had this boyish, goofy charm that everyone found endearing. He treated my daughter well, was always respectful of our family, and had a sweet personality. While he wasn't the strongest academically, he worked hard and always gave his best. I even helped him out with his homework a few times because I could see how much effort he was putting into it. I'll admit, I really liked the kid, and so did the rest of the family. My wife, my son, and even my daughter's mother, my ex-wife, really liked him too. He was a good boyfriend to my daughter, and I felt comfortable knowing she was with someone who cared about her. Eventually, they broke up when they were about 16 or 15. It wasn't a messy breakup. From what I understood, it was mutual. My daughter was understandably sad, and we did everything we could to support her through it. But she actually moved on pretty quickly, and we all kind of left it in the past. Fast forward a few months ago. I got a LinkedIn request from him, and it brought a smile to my face. It was nice to see what he was up to, especially since he struggled a lot in school. It turns out he's now studying marketing at a really good university in our country. I was genuinely happy for him because it seemed like he found his niche, and I could see he was doing well. Then I saw that he was looking for an internship. He needed to complete 500 hours of professional experience to graduate, and I didn't hesitate to reach out. I told him that if he needed company, mine would always have a spot for him. We ended up catching up, and he told me about his new girlfriend, so he's moved on. Long story short, he ended up sending me some excellent recommendations from his professor, so I offered him a position in our PR and communications department as a social media intern. He's been an amazing addition to the team. He's come up with great ideas, worked hard, and you can tell he genuinely loves what he's doing. Seeing him all grown up after knowing how much he struggled back in the day has been really heartwarming. But here's the problem. My daughter recently found out about it through TikTok. Of all places, he appears in some of the company's videos, and she was mad. She called me a terrible father and said it was inappropriate for me to hire him. Now, it's not like she ever has to see him. She's studying abroad in Belgium, and we live in a Latin American country, so they won't even cross paths. My wife, my son, and my ex-wife have reassured me that I didn't do anything wrong. From my perspective, I hired him purely based on his qualifications and work ethic. He's a temporary intern who plans to continue his studies abroad once he graduates, so this isn't a long-term situation. But my daughter's reaction has made me second-guess myself. They always prioritized her well-being and want to make sure I'm not overlooking something. Maybe I'm too detached because when I was younger I stayed on good terms with some of my ex's families and I didn't see it as a big deal. I really care about my daughter and I don't want her to feel like I'm prioritizing someone else over her. But at the same time I want to be fair and give credit where it's due, especially when someone is working hard and making something of themselves. Update 1. A lot of you suggested that I have an honest conversation with my daughter to see if there was something deeper going on, and I took that advice. I ended up calling her to talk things through. I asked her if there was something about the breakup that I didn't know about, or if something happened that would make her uncomfortable with him working for me. I told her that she can be completely honest with me because I wanted to give her the benefit of the doubt, and if there was a valid reason I was open to addressing it. Turns out, the situation was a lot less complicated than I thought. My daughter admitted that there wasn't any lingering issue between her and her ex. In fact, she reiterated what I already knew, that the breakup was mutual and drama-free. What came out during the conversation was something completely different. Apparently, she's been dating a new guy from the United States for about 2 weeks. She said that when she saw her ex in the company's TikTok videos, it made her nervous because she didn't want things to get weird with the new guy if he found out that her dad was still in contact with her ex-boyfriend. She said that Americans are different in that sense. Those were her words. You guys tell me if it's true, ha ha ha. Basically, she was worried that her new relationship could be affected if the guy she is seeing thought there was still some kind of connection between her and her ex through me. But when I pressed her about whether her ex had done anything wrong, Or if there was any actual issue that would justify me not hiring him. She admitted there wasn't. Her main concern was her new relationship and how it might look. I get that she's navigating a new relationship, but to expect me to turn down a great intern, who's been nothing but hardworking because she's worried about optics with a guy she's been seeing for 2 weeks seems pretty unreasonable. I don't think it's fair to penalize him or limit his opportunities just because of that. I explained all of this to her as gently as I could, and she admitted that she might have overreacted. I reassured her that this internship was a temporary situation and that she would likely never even have to interact with him, especially with her living abroad. I also apologized for not asking her first about her thoughts on me hiring him. I thought it really didn't matter since, from my point of view, I was just hiring a great professional based on qualifications and work ethics, but comments made me see how I could have been the asshole for not telling her. And she told me that it's okay.